Where is the air not so clean? And that's clearly Ukraine, but it doesn't matter because in Ukraine, we're happy to burn fuel, explode weapons, and destroy people. Let's just catch up with what's been happening. This is a report from a few days ago, but I think it's very significant because it's our very own Admiral Radakin with his bestie friend, because he's been on a visit to Ukraine, some of it which was made public and some of it wasn't. So if we have a look at some of the reports here, this was no ordinary discussion. Zelensky brought his entire command team with him on the 300-mile journey from Kyiv. The aim of the 5-hour meeting was to help reset Ukraine's military strategy. And the point about that was because the Ukrainian strategy is not working on the battlefield. The summit at the border had partly come about after Radakin travelled without any British ministers to Kyiv, where he held an unpublicised 45-minute meeting with the Ukrainian president. So the British public not even entitled to know what senior British military personnel are doing when they're visiting Ukraine. The report went on to say that the White House has got anxiety about the US appearing to be closely involved in the Ukraine war, but it's not a problem for Britain. So Radakin was there, and the comment was that Britain, whose military is far smaller than the US, has no such concerns. So we're right alongside the Ukrainians, and Admiral Radakin is leading, it would appear, the disastrous counter-offensive. Now have a look at this picture. This is from X, from the Twitter page. More grinning photographs with hands and arms around each other. And part of the comment in the article we've just covered is that normally, apparently, Radakin brings a bottle of Glenmorangie, Zelensky's favourite whiskey, as a gift. So this is an old boys network which is helping to ramp up and sustain the war, and it will be sustained, as we'll see in a minute. But let's have a look at the realities for Ukrainians as their snatch squads operate on the streets. This is another, I can't see the age, but I think he's a youngish man being dragged off to the battlefield. And the reality is he's probably not going to live long. If we have a look at a video clip, we don't usually show many video clips because they're just too difficult to watch. But this really sums up the battle. And of course, we can see that this is filmed from a Russian drone. We've got Ukrainian troops in the foreground, or one individual. And as a result of an attack by a shell, he's retreating. But watch what happens as the surveillance continues. So the reality on the battlefield is that whoever controls the zone, the drones, can of course see what's happening on the battlefield. The Russians have the artillery, and ultimately truly horrible events like this are happening on a daily basis, supported of course by the UK government and the UK Ministry of Defence. So these Ukrainian troops are clearly killed by a direct shell hit, which occurs in a few seconds. This is truly tragic stuff, but as I say, it's happening across the battlefield. And meanwhile, we've got these people conducting meetings out of sight of the public. And we should remember that the statistics so far are 25,000 killed. This is just in the Ukrainian offensive. This is nothing to do with the rest of the sustained fighting. Now, recently there was an interview. I'll just let this play in the background a little bit. This was an interview where Zelensky did quite a long piece, about an hour and a half, I think, with a lady called Natalia Mozichuk. And as you see from the start of the video, we've got the glories of the Ukraine palace, as I will describe it. So the war is glorified. There's no bloodshed on these images. But in a minute, Zelensky struts down the flight of stairs as if he was the fairy queen. We just wait for this to play out. Here he is. And this is the lead into the interview itself. But let's have a look at what was actually said. Now, we've taken some excerpts here, and we'd like to thank Vanessa Beeley for pointing us at some of this information. So I've got a number of very short quotes. Let's go through as fast as we can. We're ready to fight for a long time if we don't lose people. like, for example, Israel. We can live like this. So Zelensky is clearly happy for the war to go on. I do not think it's right to transfer hostilities to the Russian territory. There is a great risk that in such a case, we will be left alone. He means abandoned by allies. If we're on the administrative border with Crimea, I think we can politically push for the demilitarization of the peninsula. Ukraine needs to grow up and realize that at one point or another, Ukraine may be alone. Some of our partners may break away. So he's pretty disparaging of the Ukrainian people themselves. He's also set a task for lawmakers, which is to equate corruption with treason. He's had to do this because it's clear that the treason is growing and growing inside Ukraine as the society breaks down. And this is unsettling the Western allies. So he's now making that a treason offence. But this is the good news. Ukraine is now open to partners and investors, and each of them can find their own niche and receive state support. So what does he want? Well, we're told here, and there's no doubt about it, it is of great importance that we are a tester, a pioneer in the good sense of the word, of the launch and use of many types of ammunition, modern ones. This is a great example for many businessmen around the world. I think we'll be number one in this area, military tech and digital, at least on the European continent. David, very, very quickly, just for a little bit of comment. This is, to me, quite disgusting. We're really seeing what this man is. He doesn't value life at all. It's let's get the businessman in and let's develop the technology to kill more people in a more efficient way.
It doesn't seem particularly reality-based, that comment to me, Brian. I find it hard to believe that the Ukraine is going to be developing its own independent, high-tech, cutting-edge weaponry. What they're doing is they're testing and using kit acquired from all around the West. That's not the same as having some incoming investment. And to view a war as an investment opportunity is very, very wrong-headed. And when it's involving your own people, it starts to look alarmingly callous.
Yes, callous, that's the word. Mark, very quickly.
I smell the presence of Palantir with the war and technology thing. And I've talked about that recently, that top Bilderberg participant, Alex Karp, having planted his technological roots into Ukraine. So I sense Palantir's involvement in this.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, we're certainly going to be following through on it, Mark, so we'll see what comes out. But where's the war heading? Well, it gets better or worse, depending on how you look at it. Part of Zelensky's comment, many debts incurred during this war, I'm sure, will be restructured, but there will be no gifts. And let's follow that with Asia Times, which had a really interesting article, Ukraine to cost $500 billion more if the war ends now. Ukraine war will end up being the most costly and perhaps corrupt foreign operation ever carried out by the United States. And if we just summarize the main text, they say that the World Bank and others have calculated that if the war stops tomorrow, it's going to cost $600 billion. And then as a comparison, they say the war in Iraq featured a reconstruction program of $60 billion, and the US also spent $90 billion over 12 years to support Afghanistan. So we can see here the huge scale of destruction in this war, and the objective of the West is to keep the proxy war going, is not to stop it. So we're going to see more debt, and we're going to see a bigger bill for some future reconstruction of Ukraine in whatever form the country remains. But we'll leave it that words from Zelensky, some people suggest he's on drugs. I can't say he is or he isn't, but as David has suggested, the man is unbelievably cruel when his own people are concerned. Well,